Hello everybody, I'm Jill Case and I am here for our Tools for a Genius Living series, and today we are talking about astrology. So I want to make sure, hopefully you guys can hear me. This is my first Facebook Live, so I'm still learning this technology, but I'm excited to learn with you. So I want to give you a little background of what we're going to talk about today. We'll talk about what astrology is, how I've used it as an astrologer and as actually a consultant and coach, how I've used it in my life. And I'll talk to you about also what astrology is not, and maybe debunk some myths that you might have heard if you're not very familiar with astrology. And then we'll talk about some ways that you can right away learn about astrology and integrate it into your life to support yourself in your own life in whatever facet that you might find this helpful with. So we'll get started. Please enter any comments that you have or questions in the chat, and I'd love to answer your questions if you have them. I have some polls that hopefully you can see, and I'm curious if any of you have had an astrology reading, or if you haven't, if you've heard of astrology and have you ever read about it or worked with it. I'm really curious about that. So let's start with what is astrology. So it's a very old science, to be honest. It's over 5,000 years old. So this has been used through ancient civilizations to predict different things, to understand our relationship with nature. So astrology is a really, really old science. And I do say science because this isn't just an ethereal kind of supposition of who you are as a person, but actually what your astrological birth chart is, which is probably, if you've heard of having an astrology reading, that's what the person is actually doing, is when you were born, if you have your time of birth, it's like a snapshot. And so wherever the planetary bodies are in the sky, so those are the planets like Mars and Venus and Mercury, wherever they are in the sky, and whatever constellation they're traveling through, so for example, like Mercury being in Virgo or Leo, or the zodiac signs, right? Each of the planets can be in any of those zodiac signs. So wherever the planetary bodies are in the sky during the time of your birth, that would be your unique birth chart. And so people born on the same day don't have the same birth chart because their time of birth is different. And even if you had the exact same time of birth as someone else, same year, same everything, how you will live out your chart will totally look different. So it's not a way of necessarily locking you into any certain future, although, because there's many different ways to express your own chart. So there's still a lot of creativity within the chart. So that's what your astrological birth chart is. So astrology is a tool that you can use to understand yourself, to understand your relationship with nature. That's kind of honestly what I really love about astrology, is that truly it does connect us to nature, to the cycles that we go in, to spring, to summer, to fall. It connects us to things larger than ourselves, so like the planets, the cosmos, but even the elements, because within astrology we see the elements of earth and air and water and fire, and those have qualities, and those connect us to those things that we can see in nature. And so there's just so much richness within astrology that we can take to learn about ourselves, to learn about each other, to learn about life. And I just find this to be such a tool to kind of integrate all of those things. So that's what astrology is. What is it not? So these are some of my personal views of it. Now, you will always have people that do astrology readings and have their own philosophy on astrology. So this is my personal one from the 20 years or whatever I've been practicing astrology. For me, I don't tend to dabble a lot in the predictive aspects of astrology. Certainly, I can cast a chart for 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I can tell you in 3 weeks where the planets will be going through your chart. So that we call it transiting planets. So there's your birth chart, which never changes, and there's the planets that are currently moving and how they're affecting your birth chart. Yes, there are totally things that you can say that there will be a proclivity or a very high tendency for certain things to happen during certain times, but I don't tend to get really far in the future for a couple reasons. One is that I find that when you do start to predict things, that people generally start to get in, oftentimes like fear-based kind of thinking around it. Like, oh my gosh, there's a good chance I'm going to lose my relationship in a month because there's a good chance that, you know, the way the aspect is, it's to be challenging for relationships. So I find that it can kind of bring in an extra element of fear sometimes within people that kind of prevents them from being really present. So for me, I don't tend to use it to predict because of that, and also because every moment you're creating. So in this moment, the choices that you're making are a better predictor of the future than casting a chart 2 weeks and trying to figure out what's going to happen to you, because that's a very disempowering way to use astrology. I would rather use it as a tool to help you understand what's happening for you now and to really truly understand kind of your choice as creator. So I don't choose to use it as predictive tools for those kind of reasons. It's not a religion. So you can have any religious preference. You can be non-religious or non-spiritual, and you can still use astrology, because there's a whole lot of astrology that really has nothing to do with religion, God, spirituality. So there's plenty of room for that, no matter what your religious belief or your spiritual belief. It isn't a religion. So maybe that's something that might have stopped you. I hear a lot of people that say, oh, like I wouldn't do an astrology reading because I'm a Christian or because I'm this. And I welcome anyone to come do a reading with me, and we can still respect and honor your beliefs and values within that, because really a lot of what we talk about has nothing to do with that, and actually it welcomes your beliefs and your philosophies. I also am not an astrologer that tends to talk about like detriments, like, oh, you've got Mercury in Aries, oh, well, that's a detriment, or Venus doesn't like to be in this sign. I'm not someone that actually succumbs to that. I truly think that whatever your chart looks like, whatever dynamics are in your chart, whoever you are is exactly who you're supposed to be, and it's amazing. And your life is exactly how you would have it to be as creator. And so by the choices that you're making and by what you desire in life. So I don't think that any certain chart or placement of charts or things are better than others. So there's not a good chart and a bad chart. There isn't a better way that this planet could be showing up in your life. Sure, there are different aspects of our charts that provide challenge, but we all have them. We just have them differently. So those are some of the things that astrology is not. So there is things that I feel that I really want to focus in today on what I love about astrology, but those are just some of the common things that I tend to get from people when they say things like, oh, I would never do an astrology reading, here are my reasons. And it could be that you just had a bad experience. And so I really encourage you to, if you've never had a reading, get a reading and just see what you think. And I will say that, like, even though I'm an astrologer, I've had many astrology readings through the years from different astrologers, and they all have a wonderful way of looking at the same planetary aspects and the chart that you have really uniquely. Really, everyone will kind of see things differently, and that can be really interesting to have that experience. If you do want to get your chart read, the things that you'll need is your exact time of birth, your city state of birth. Now, a lot of people don't have their birth times, especially if you were born in times in cities and states that, or countries even, that didn't put exact birth times. That's okay. I would say literally probably 30% of the charts that I've read throughout my career people have not had their exact birth times, and that's okay. We can still do a reading. It's not as detailed as if I had that, but we can still work with it. And I always find that people get what they need. Truly, like there is, I have that a belief in life that you're never being kept from something that you need. So if you don't have your exact birth time, it's okay. We can still work with that. So maybe now I'll talk kind of about my history with astrology and how I got into it and why I love it so much, and maybe how I've used it through the years. So I think it's been 18, 19, 20 years, I don't know, that I've been using astrology, doing readings. I think I don't even know how many charts I've read, but I want to say it's probably over 500 charts that are people that I've sat with and had amazing conversations and learned about their journeys. So I've used this as an astrologer myself. So I've been an astrologer and I do personal readings, and I've been doing them for many years. I've also actually used them with companies. So I've worked with companies that have said, hey, can we take a look at our team dynamics? Can you pull a chart for every person on the team and do a composite chart, which means we kind of blend the charts, and tell us like where would our gaps be? What kind of personalities do we need to bring on the team? What kind of dynamics will our team face? Fascinating work. So we've had companies that have been really interested in that. I've also helped companies with hiring, looking at people's birth charts. Because, when you look at a chart, you can tell some different tendencies the person would have. You do know what their talents would generally be, what kind of, generally what kind of person this is going to be. Now, of course, you still want to meet the person and feel them out, but you definitely can learn a lot about someone from their chart. So hiring practices, astrology can be a really cool tool for that. There's also like talent development. So in looking at people and looking at how do I access more of my leadership potential or more of my value and talents that I have. I use it all the time one-on-one with leaders, but also as a group in leadership, I've done this. And then working with like team dynamics, like I said, so working with that. So there's a lot of really cool ways to work with astrology by using individual charts and group charts of a team. So astrology isn't just something that's used for fun or, you know, kind of on the side. You can actually use this in the work. And I use this a lot of times with my coaching, even people that weren't coming to me for an astrological consultation, but just in general coaching, just to provide some extra insight and guidance. And I found through the years that people have found that to be super helpful and interesting, and rarely is there information there that people don't feel is valuable, and another layer of just things to be able to work with to give you more tools and access to knowing yourself. So those are some of the ways I've used astrology, and then I've also just always used it in my own life, and it's influenced the way I teach yoga. So if you've ever been to any of my yoga classes, how I choose what we're going to do that day is based on the astrology of the times. I basically feel the energy and I feel what needs to move through our body so that we can better attune to what's happening, because we are a part of our environment. What's happening in the cosmos, what's happening in our local environment, like we're feeling that. And so I like to sequence classes that allow us to feel the energy and be able to harmonize with it, to use it skillfully. So I use it for yoga. I use it for my own personal navigation to understand different cycles that are going on in my life. And when I have times of maybe where I'm going through something challenging, I use astrology to shed some light on maybe areas of my life that maybe feel like I'm lacking clarity. Or if I'm really working on something that I'm excited to do and I want to really enhance my talent, really understand like where my capacity is, I like to understand astrology for that. So I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but that's how I've currently used astrology through my career. So it really has touched everything that I do. And that's really the cool thing about astrology, is that there isn't just a limit to anything that it can do. It's not like you could just use it for this or that. It truly can be used for all facets. So maybe now I'll tell you about some of the things that I've helped people with through the years. I would say the majority of people come to me for two reasons for a reading, and that's just me. One of them is that they feel stuck. So maybe there's something happening in their life where they feel like they're at an impasse. Like, you know, maybe there's just something happening within their job and they're like, do I take another job? Do I leave? Do I go on a whole nother trajectory? I find astrology can be super, super helpful for clarity and really understanding the person and what's going on and why they might feel like they're in that place. I get a lot of questions about relationships. So maybe someone comes because they're having challenge in a relationship, or maybe they're on the cusp of divorce, or maybe they're wanting to get married and they just want to check in with like, is this a good partnership? Like, are the dynamics that I'm seeing, am I seeing everything? And so we can look at astrology through relationships without even the other person, because in looking at your chart, the relationship dynamics that you'll face are in your chart. So your family of origin, kind of dynamics that you come into this life with, and also the relationship dynamics that you'll have with like coworkers, but also yourself and your relationship with lovers. And so we can talk about some of the dynamics that you might be struggling with, and also what you're trying to learn. Because the cool thing about astrology and really life in general is that anything we struggle with isn't there just to mess us up and give us something to find stress about, but it's really to allow growth, allow us new choices, allow us to expand. And so really, I think having the chart, I find people get so much peace, because they'll say there's this issue that's happening and I'm really struggling with this, and then we just get another lens and another way to look at it where it's not so heavy, where people don't have to feel like I'm doing something wrong or I've messed up or why is life happening like this. They actually can go, oh, you mean like I would design this because like this experience is what I'm supposed to be feeling, or like this constant angst between my work life and my personal life, you mean that's built into my chart because I'm trying to learn more balance? So it's just so helpful for relationship dynamics that you have with anyone in your life. But we also can pull another person's chart, and like I said, do a composite chart or a synastry chart, and we can look at what the relationship will be offering each of you and what type of energies are created with the two people joined. And I've done a lot of those through the years that can be helpful. I find a lot of people will come to find purpose. So, maybe someone's had a successful career, but they're like, I just want something deeper. Like, I want to find something that feels more meaningful. Like, yes, I have money and a job and I've got the thing, but there's something deeper that I want. And astrology really helps you with that. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, and so that's really our territory, is really getting into the soul and like, what kind of experiences does your soul want in this lifetime? And that's different than like what kind of job. A lot of people will come to me and say, what's the right job for me to be in? And it's really not about the right job. There are probably infinite numbers of jobs that your chart disposition would lend you to. There are just some that might be more synergistic and than others, but really there's not like, it's not a complete like, guide that says it's this job. You have, because you're in Aries, you have to be a surgeon or something. It's not really like that. But with finding purpose, a lot of people mistake their job and their purpose, and really like you might have a soul purpose in this life that has nothing to do with your work. In fact, many of the people's chart that I read, like the job is just the thing, right? It's just a way to make money, and it's something that they have in their life, but it's not really like the thing. Like the thing might be to continue to get outside their comfort zone so that they can continue to see their ability to adapt and grow and be resilient. Or maybe it's for them to just explore a lot of different things in life. So people might say, well, why can't I keep a job? Or why do I keep changing my mind? And then we look at their chart, and that's what they wanted. They wanted to come here and to have lots of variation of experience. So oftentimes finding ideal careers or looking at like soul purpose or just more meaningful things that they can find in their life. And that can be found in a lot of different things, not just occupations. It could be in just the way they express their creativity or their talents. I find that to be really popular. Did you know that astrology can actually help discover your ideal locations to live? That there are more synergistic places for us to live, and that you might be more called to travel. So that's a cool aspect of astrology that I really appreciate. And what's cool is that I actually don't practice that one as much, as far as I don't give readings for that. But I've had those readings, and what's really cool is that I found that like my intuition was naturally guiding me to the places that were very synergistic, and the experiences I was having in the places that were, places of growth. I was receiving exactly that. So I find that to be really interesting. I find that a lot of people come for just knowing themselves better. Astrology is a huge tool for self-mastery, for self-growth, for self-realization, just truly understanding who you are as a person. What are your values? How do you like to communicate? What are the ways in which, if you move through life in this way, you will feel more in flow and in sync? And what are the things that you've come here to kind of overcome? All of these are wonderful, and it's wonderful to have, in some ways, a non-biased view of that. Because oftentimes the story we tell ourselves about our own life is like, oh man, like this is my life, and it's been so crazy or messy. And then we see in our chart that it's actually really a beautiful tapestry being weaved of all the different experiences that you are, and how uniquely you're created and built. So I find that to be a really, really profound tool for astrology. And then just daily navigation, or, navigating through cycles, when I get a lot of chart readings, sometimes when people are like finishing college, or they're, maybe their late 20s, it's when generally you're in a Saturn return. And that tends to be a time I get a lot of readings, because this is a significant transition. I'm into a different level of adulthood. And so oftentimes people are just trying to navigate, like, just want to check in, like how I'm feeling, like this is what this is what I'm sensing. Is this kind of what my chart would say right now? So just kind of another litmus test for alignment. When I read charts, I don't do a lot of telling people how certain things do, but I like to really have conversation with them, so that I can say, here's a dynamic. How do you see this in your life? And then we talk through it, because again, there's so much choice within each person as to how they're choosing to express their archetypes and their planets. And how they're choosing to work with this dynamic. So those are kind of the main things people come to me for, are those kind of facets. And my goodness, there's like so much more health. We could talk about your health. So oftentimes people would come and they're experiencing some health concerns and they want to know, like, is this in my chart? And oftentimes, yes, like we can foresee certain types of health, and we can also look at the transits to know, like, why might this health issue be arising, and how might you be able to really skillfully care for yourself and to support your healing. So that's another aspect that we can look at. Truly, so many different aspects, ideal work environments, ideal jobs, all of those things. So there's innumerable things that you can work with in astrology. So that's one of the things that can help with. And again, if you're not sure, you can always ask the person that you want to get the reading from, or again, and there's different types of astrology. So some types cater more to certain things. So there's a lot out there. There's Vedic astrology, there's Western astrology, there's evolutionary astrology, lots of different variations. I will say that if you're just learning astrology, a reading can be a really great way to get an intro. It's very hard to read your own chart if you've not had training, because many people will say, oh, I know my sun sign, and therefore this must be who I am. And to some degree, yes, your sun sign tells you a lot. So does your rising, so does your moon, so do the aspects that those planets make with other planets. So just because you're a Leo doesn't mean that you have all the characteristics of a Leo exactly as you might read them, because we don't know what other planets are aspecting that. When I say aspect, I mean in relationship to that. So like if you're on an island by yourself, you would be a different person than if you're a person in a city having lots of relationships. So again, the planets have relationships just like we do, and our relationships influence us. So do the planets. So if you're just learning astrology, I always recommend start with your sun and your moon and your rising. Those tell you really pivotal parts of your personality. Learn the personal planets and your signs. The house placements, which are kind of the areas of life in which the action's taking place. Those can be a whole nother layer. So I just start in layers. For that. So if I were to suggest you to go and learn astrology, one of the ways that I like to share it, and if you come to my yoga classes or come to my workshops that I have on astrology, I generally always start with the solar theme. So that's where the sun is. Like right now we're in Leo season. And so really that's the easiest thing to feel into, because the sun is really close to us, right? Closer than, it's closer, and it's such a big luminary that we feel its energy so strongly. So I talk about here's what's happening for this month. And again, it's not a calendar month. It starts at, whatever time Leo season would start, which is the end of the month, the 23rd-ish, plus or minus some days at times, and through the following month. So you have 30 days to feel out a cycle. So if you were to learn what is Leo season, then you can kind of get a theme for this month. These types of themes are going to be present, and then you can kind of play into, how is this showing up in my life? If you did have your chart, you could look at what house is it going through, what is Leo going through, and then I might know more specifically where I might feel the energy. So I would start with, what's the solar cycle we're in? And you can always go to my website and my blog, because I'll always talk about that through my YouTube videos, the posts that I have on my blog. So you can always learn that. And then you could also just go a little level deeper and just kind of ask yourself some questions about where are these things showing up. Another way that I recommend using this, and this is again doesn't really take any training, is to learn the lunar cycles. So you can look in the sky and tell, oh, it's a new moon. I can't see a moon, or I see a really sliver. And then you can see the full moon. And this is the lunation cycle, which is 28 days, 28 and a half days. And what you can see in a lunar cycle is a process, and a lot of people set intentions, so they set intention on a new moon, and then at the full moon there's usually a good point of hey, how'd that go? Are there any adjustments that I want to be made in this intention? And then we feel the energy wane. So you can use the lunar cycle for setting intentions, but another aspect of the lunar cycle that I like is just attuning to the fact that we are always flowing. like we're really never the same all month. Like some days we have energy, some days we feel more, reserved, some days we feel social, some days we don't. And the moon, because it travels so fast through the archetypes, and each of the archetypes have different elemental qualities and other qualities, that it truly helps me attune to the days in which I'm like, wow, like today I just feel like I want to nap and rest. And I look at it, I'm like, oh, well, the moon's in Cancer. Of course, that's why I might be feeling that. So to me, it kind of gives you permission to be human, to not really have to always push yourself to be a certain way, to really allow yourself to be more in touch and in tune with nature. So I like, kind of following the lunar cycle. And again, you can always just Google like, what's the moon in today? There's lots of lunar calendars that will tell you that are sold. And gosh, there's tons of online resources and apps that will tell you this. So those are always a great way to learn. So maybe you work with setting intention on the new moon of what you want to work with. And then you kind of, as you're following the moon cycles and where the moon is through different stages, you can look up, hey, the moon's in Taurus today. What does that mean? What are the qualities of Taurus, and how might I work with that within my intention? So that's a little bit more complicated than the solar cycle. You can also just follow what sign the moon's in and read about that and just kind of feel into how that feels for you. Because the moon is a much more personalized, like the feeling place of that, whereas the sun is more like an overall energy, And then if you were to start to just learn astrology and you wanted to just like learn a little bit about yourself, again, learn your sun sign. So find out, there's a lot of even free astrology software out there that you can get your free chart. You could also send me a message and I'll be glad to send you a chart. And you can find out what your sun sign is, and you can look up and read about that, find out what your moon sign is. You will have to have your time of birth for that usually, but if not, you can guess, and hopefully it's not a day in which the moon is transiting signs. And then you can look up your rising, which again, you will have to have your birth time for that. But if you just looked up that, or if you had an ephemeris or handy to ephemeris, you could look that up with just knowing those dates and times. So there's just some really easy ways that you can learn astrology. Stephen Forrest is my personal favorite author of a lot of really cool books. The Inner Sky is a really good intro book that he has where he talks about just general things of astrology. That was probably one that I really liked. There's tons of, obviously, things that you can learn on YouTube. But my suggestion is to always trust what you feel over what you hear. So if someone tells you, this is a quality of a Cancer sun, and you go, that just doesn't feel like me. Well, trust that, because probably you have an aspect or you have something that is changing out how your Cancer sun's being expressed. So I never want people to use astrology to go against what they feel and know within themselves. And so always trust that. It doesn't matter how much of an expert they are. Trust that you know yourself and your expression of yourself way better than anyone else could. So I do like to always say that as a caveat, is that to trust yourself. But there are tons of great resources. If you have any questions, you can always feel free to message me for resources and things, and I'm happy to share the resources. My goodness, there's so many different amazing people right now studying and talking about astrology in their own way. There's different people that specialize in different types of astrology. So I'm just giving you a really short blurb in my blurb on my take on astrology, because for me, why I think it's a genius tool. And when I say genius tool, what I'm saying is that it's a tool that helps you live more empowered, more fulfilling, more joy-forward life. And it's living in these tools that I'm talking about are tools that are timeless. And they're tools that aren't just working with the mind, but they're working with you as a whole person that has a body, that has feelings, that has energy moving through you. And what I love about astrology is a tool to really leverage and understand yourself so that you can be your best self, so that you can know yourself so much more deeper than just what your mind or personality tells you, that you can understand those deeper desires within you, and you can understand how you work so that you don't feel like you have to conform or fit into any boxes, that you can truly just be you. And that's what I love about astrology. And in my attempt to sit with someone and read is to really help them discover their potential, to really help them discover the beauty, the brilliance, the radiance that comes when they just truly own who they are. And I find that no matter the person, their experience with astrology, that in sitting with a person and allowing them to be themselves and to give them permission to be living the life that they're living, and all the ways in which they can truly own and be themselves, it's quite fulfilling, which is why I love it so much. And I think however you're drawn to get into astrology or to learn, whether that's to like watch some videos or maybe read the blog post I have, or I do an astrology of the week on YouTube, so you can go to my channel and just listen to that, see if it resonates. Come try my yoga class at Yo-Yo Yogi, Mondays at 4, and you can feel out astrology. There's really, I would say just be curious and see if it resonates, because sometimes things that are new don't always resonate because they just feel awkward or weird, or we think, oh, I don't know enough. But truly, it's not about how much you know, it's what will serve you. And if you're curious, then what you need to know will come and be available to you, and the right people that can support that. And whatever way you choose to work with astrology, I hope you'll give it a shot and be curious. And I would love to read your chart if you are interested. And if not, I would love to help support answering any questions you have about how astrology can be a genius tool in your tool belt of your genius life. Well, it's already been 30 minutes. Wow. I hope that you'll join me next week for essential oils. We're going to talk about the power of essential oils for your health, your well-being, for your intentions, for whatever it is that you're creating in your life. These are another powerful tool that have been dear to me through my journey. So I look forward to talking with you next week, friends. And until then, blessings to you, and thanks for watching. Please like or share this with anyone you feel would benefit, and I would love to hear from you.